Thank you very much for coming along to this session today. This is the history and future of marketing. A very grand title, but I just feel that it's a really pertinent moment to go here because a lot of us in marketing and communications, I believe, are living in a past scenario using past models, past theories and frameworks that we call marketing, but that are very, very outdated and probably, I will argue, as we go through this session, not really fit for purpose anymore. There are so many things changing. You only have to look at the marketing press, you have to look in social media, you have to talk to your colleagues and peers and listen to some of the marketing gurus around the planet to know that we are in unprecedented times. I mean, the changes that we're seeing literally on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis in some sectors are phenomenal. And of course, this comes at a price. This comes at a physical challenge to many marketers who aren't necessarily well equipped with the activity of change, which is really what we're talking about here. And this is relentless stuff. This is not something that you change on an understanding of kind of what's coming, bit of a trend, and then you're happy and you can move on to a normal. There is no normal. So what we're going to discuss here, what we're going to look at is a framework that I've created to give us a little bit of a view, if you like, on kind of where we've come from, but also where we are going to. And this is going to be really important as we go through this session, because what I've created here is something that is going to allow us to, I guess, go on something of a journey from where we've arrived at this moment in time in marketing. So we're going to look at some of the history of marketing, and then we're going to use that history based on a very, very specific cycle, which I'm going to talk to you about. And we're going to look into the future. This is looking at short-term future. And actually, in some ways, you could argue we're living in that future right now. So I'm going to challenge what you might think marketing is right here, right now. And to me, this is really, really important, really, really important stuff, because what this does is it kind of puts the cat amongst the pigeons, to use a very British phrase. What it does is it challenges how we do what we do and the perception that others have of our role. Okay, so that's kind of where we're going to go. We're going to go to the places that we don't normally like to talk about, but it's really important. I think there's never been a better time to discuss this. Okay, so when we go through this little table, which I'm going to go through step by step, we are going to focus and work our way down the table from something called Kondratiev cycle, and I will talk to you about the Kondratiev wave, which is a really important concept that will structure the pace at which marketing is developing. And I'll explain why I've chosen Kondratiev's model in just a moment. Then we're going to look at what society then, based on this cycle, this kind of constantly rolling wave, if you like, of change, what that brings and means to society. Okay, and we'll look at when the timeframes are here, because as I mentioned right at the start, we are working to ever increasing timeframes. So it's really important to understand kind of how those timeframes are impacting on what we do. Then we're going to look at the economic focus. Most of us do not work in isolation from a broader, wider macro economy. So we're going to look at that, and then you can then translate that back into your own sector, back into your own organization, into that little microcosm in which you live in an appropriate way. Then we're going to look from that economic focus into a marketing focus, because the broader economy shapes where we as marketers focus our attentions, and then deeper down into the marketing strategies that we then focus upon, because, you know, we are again not operating in an ivory tower. We're working with our competitors, other stakeholders, the financial situation, political situation, the macro analysis, if you like, of our marketplaces. And then what we're going to look at are some of the marketing models and theories that underpin each of these cycles, each of these waves, each of these moments in time. And I hope very, very quickly you will see that some of the stuff you're doing today is actually yesterday's marketing. And so what we need to do is, I would challenge, realign ourselves with the kind of models that we're using, the kind of strategies that we have, because our marketing focus is now, should now be towards the current economic focus, which has changed in the last 2 to 3 years for all of us. Okay, so I'm going to be talking very, very generically at a very high level in most of this, but you can apply this to your own sector, to your own marketing as we go. So Kondratiev cycle, what on earth has that got to do with marketing? Okay, so Nikolai Kondratiev was the kind of lead, if you like, economist in the, in Russia in 1925. So very much part of a communist economy, very much looking at a global level, though, at the way that markets, the way that societies moved. And what he came up with was Kondratiev's wave. And he basically identified that there are predictable patterns, the economy, society, wars, change, basically everything that we do as human beings on the planet works and moves and changes in relentless waves, but they're not fixed waves. They're not equal. And I'll explain how they've changed and how they are changing and how they're accelerating. And this is really, really significant stuff, both now, but also into our short to medium term future. And this is really critical. And I'm sure some of this will resonate with you when you start to think, time does feel like it's speeding up. Well, there's a reason for it. And Kondratiev, in his book back in 1925, of which there have been many, many other economic models that have been created, from Kondratiev's cycles or waves, he spotted this. It was very, very clear to him that the future is predictable on the basis of waves, predictable waves of activity, human consumption, human behaviors of the past. So, it's all very well saying Kondratiev's third wave, fourth wave, fifth wave, but what does that mean to us actually right here, right now, as we're kind of considering this? Well, it means that we are in a changing moment, if you like, and have been for the last 2 to 3 years. So the societal focus, looking way, way back, if we start really where marketing began, because we're looking here at the history and future of marketing and kind of how it's formed and why it is how it is today. So basically, 100 years ago, we were in what we called the industrial phase. So the decades between sort of 1900 and 1950 were Kondratiev's third wave. Okay, and that was the wave of a focus on industry. So the focus on production of stuff. Okay, now, of course, then the fourth wave, which we could consider from 1950 to 1990, so getting much more up to time, is the fourth wave, the societal focus being consumption. Now, if you think back to your parents and your grandparents, they were in a time of boom. So we're coming out of the Second World War. We're looking at an increasing amount of consumption. We're looking at things like efficiency. We're looking at, even if we think of consumers, we're looking at consumer convenience. So convenience stores, for example, big supermarket chains suddenly appearing around these kind of times because of the perceived need to consume. And the more you consume, the more you are perceived as successful. And that was kind of a driving force for somewhere around about 40 years. But by 1990, we saw, and for those of you who were around at that point, we saw a fundamental shift as we moved into Kondratiev's cycle fifth wave. And that was the wave of technology. And that wave lasted around about 30 years. So you can see here, industry phase, about 50 years, consumption phase, about 40 years, but then the technology phase, around 30 years. See a pattern here already developing in the fifth wave. But of course, the wave of technology, what do we see then? The internet. mobile technology. So through 1990 to 2020, this was really the flavor of the day. You had to have technology to partake in society, to work, things like hybrid working. We'd never heard of that in the consumption phase, whereas now, because of the advent of technology, much, much more was possible. So it's been a real enabler. I'm not going to judge whether this is good, bad, or indifferent. I'm just saying kind of how it is. And then we can then start to learn from that, because we are now in the sixth wave, Kondratiev cycle's sixth wave. And you can see the timescales here, predicted, of course, because that second vertical line means that we're moving into a time of evolution and transition to a world where the societal focus is on sustainability. Okay, and we all know that, we are attempting to, between now and 2040, a lot of businesses, if we're in them, we'll know this, looking to go to net zero, or even better, we're looking to reduce our personal carbon footprints. We're looking to, reduce the consumption of red meat. We're looking to get electric vehicles, or whatever vehicles are available in the not too distant future. Things are changing. Our societal focus has moved away from just mass consumption, and that actually becoming a bit of a dirty word now, because consumption implies consuming also of planet resources, whereas obviously technology has enabled us to do more of that on a global level. You think where some of your food comes from, very efficiently, the other side of the planet. But of course, the carbon footprint of that, the travel, the transport, the process and supply chains, all have a big significant impact there. So that might not be necessarily the way forward. And so the focus on societal sustainability, both from a consumer but also from a business perspective, is likely to last probably in the sixth wave for around about 20 years. So the assumption based on Kondratiev's cycle is that the next phase is going to come down again, maybe down to 10 years. And that phase, 2040 to 2050, is likely to be a phase of consolidation. So having moved from consumption into technology, into sustainability, and then having, hopefully, fingers crossed, because we might not be here if we don't, from the phase of sustainability, moving into a phase of well-being, where well-being of all, high value of everything that we do. So not quantity, but quality. So, caring for others, things like circular economy, all of these kind of buzz phrases where it is for societal and human and planet good. So well-being for people and everything. And that is a very likely, according to the research, very likely next focus of society in the seventh wave. And if you look at a lot of the research companies who are doing very long-term macro, if not global research, they're all pointing to that kind of word well-being. Now, of course, it's in our vocabulary now, but because we have to focus as a society on getting the sustainability thing done first, then well-being is likely to be the thing that will follow after that. Okay, so what does that really then mean in terms of translating? We may or may not have that bit wrong, but the point is these waves, these cycles are coming down in time frame faster and faster and faster. So 50 years down to 40, 30, 20, 10. So we're seeing the pace of change increasing very quickly. And again, you've probably seen this, how your market changes, how the seasons seem to pass without even you noticing, and suddenly you're into the next season. The pace of change is no coincidence. Kondratiev, back in 1925, nearly 100 years ago, predicted that this would happen. And every single thing that has been predicted has been borne true. So what does that then mean for the kind of the economy into which obviously our marketing is focused? Well, let's take a little trip back to that third wave in the industry societal focus. So between about 1900, excuse me, 1900 and 1950, there was a big change. The use of chemicals, electricity, the prevalence of the internal combustion engine allowed us in those days to move things quickly around our local economies, or more generally, more widely. Electricity opened up the opportunity to be powering our industries, our factories, our production lines on a 24/7 basis. So we were able to really accelerate the amount of production of stuff. And that's really significant, because that opened up then in the fourth wave for the next 40 years, the opportunity to mass consume the industries that had been producing a lot of product in those days. So we became used to, and we became, it became very attractive to consume. So you'd have the latest thing. You would probably replace things more frequently than you did in the past because you could. And electronics, things that were on a manual basis in the past became, available to us. The rise of the computer in the home, the rise of smart technologies, all of these things started to become available to us. And of course, then that in itself made it easier to consume. It also made it easier to produce more. So there was this kind of virtuous cycle of production, consumption, production, consumption. And so it was fueling itself. And this is why a lot of commentators would argue we're in the situation that we're in right now, is because it was unpoliced, it was unchecked, and we actually viewed consumption as a measure of success. And of course, now we're finding the flip side of that in a very, very obvious, very, very dramatic and shocking kind of way. Another thing that happened actually between 1950 and 1990 in that fourth wave was aviation. The massive growth of international transport, not only by sea, but by air. So you could order things from anywhere in the world and they would arrive next day. You could be very, very much, if you were in a production facility somewhere on the other side of the planet, serving, retailers or serving wholesalers, very, very distant to you in a pretty efficient, but of course, a mass consumption focused way. So it was all about supply and demand. The economic focus, though, changed on the advent of the technology phase, that fifth wave, 1990 to 2020. This saw the arrival of the internet. I can remember the internet back in the very early days, launched my first website back in 1994, when a website was about as exciting as just words on a page, but you knew as a marketer this was something special. And along with the internet and, of course, social media in those days came the idea and the concept of big data. In other words, you knew everything about your customer. You could research them, you could keep customer records, you could watch their behaviors, you could see how they use the products and services, and then you could evaluate how to do things more efficiently. So it wasn't just production and consumption. It was done in a way that really sort of allowed us to, really manage that customer relationship in a really new and interesting, exciting way. But it was, again, fueling the idea of consumption. And that is, when we look at a lot of the targets that organizations have, still, for most organizations, still the focus. It's all about shareholder value. And the number of times I hear that, and that basically means selling more and making more profit. But that is a model that died very, very clearly in 2020, at the end of that fifth wave on the Kondratiev cycle, because post-pandemic, everything was different. Anybody, and I can remember quite a few people at the time saying, oh, it'll be so great when we get back to normal. Well, Kondratiev would have laughed at that, because he would say, you were never going back to any kind of normal, because it never was normal. And you can't go back because you're on the cycles, you're on these waves, and you're now in the sixth wave. And as soon as I found out, and it's only quite recently that I found out about Kondratiev and his work, everything just slotted into place. And I thought, there is the answer to this kind of thing I've been tussling with and really feeling uncomfortable about, this whole back to normal concept for many, many years, way before pandemic. But it was really highlighted then, because I just knew that just didn't feel right. It just didn't resonate. And now with this model of Kondratiev cycles, I can see why. Because what has happened? Well, most marketers were talking, and continue to talk about social media, big data, the internet, digital marketing. but that's yesterday's marketing. That marketing is 3, 4, 5 years old now. Yes, we can still consider those as channels, but as marketers, the current economic focus is, as a society, around sustainability, and underneath that, at an economic level, it's about renewable energies. It's about how sustainable are you as a business, because your customers want to know. They're not just buying your products and services anymore. That was the technology phase. That was the consumption phase, 1950 to 2020. Now, what they're most interested in, and your brand needs to reflect this, it's not a want, it's a need, is your sustainability credentials. So are you carbon literate? Are you greenwashing? What is your current situation? And then if this is a little embarrassing wake-up call for you, now is the time to embrace it, because I will almost guarantee your competitors haven't woken up to this yet. They're still in that technological phase where they're looking at their social media, their search engine optimization. And don't get me wrong, those things are still important, but they're not the focus of the current economic climate. And of course, as we know, in the last year or so, the big hot topic is AI, and we'll see in the not too distant future AI plus robotics. So we will see automation of stuff. We're already seeing it in mass production of say the automotive industry, for example, has had this for many years, and other industries are similar. But now it's coming into service industries where we're seeing AI not necessarily take the place. I'm not going to get into the whole debate about whether this is going to take over from marketing and content producers, etc. That's for another time. That's not for now. We're looking at the macro level, but it is here, and it is here to hopefully facilitate a different kind of focus, because it's available to us. So we should be embracing it. So if all you're focusing on is content production, social media, the internet, digital marketing campaigns, well, I'm sorry to have to break it to you. You're focused on history. You need to be to the right of this line, because we are now, as an economy, as a sector, as a society, into the 6th wave. So please start to pay attention to this, because it's super important. And it is also really quite interesting then if we look forward to, because of course, if you look at it, 2040, for most of us, is actually now appearing on the horizon. If you're in an industry where you do strategic plan, you're going to need to have a view on what's coming next, because these cycles, these waves are increasing and increasing. So if you're likely to be working still between, say, 2050 and maybe 2055, because the numbers look like they might even halve again in the 8th wave, it might only be a 5-year wave. And can you see what's happening here? This is quite dramatic stuff. I can't predict, I can't show you what's going to be there in that 8th wave, but at least look at the 7th wave, the one that's focused societally on well-being. Because by 2040, and let's face it, that's only 16 and a half years away. It's not that far away now. If you think strategically, we're going to be looking at regeneration, not just sustainability, but how can we turn things around and actually start to become positive, not just neutral, but positive? Can we create circularity in business? Can we create a way of, not just producing new stuff, but repurposing? Can we reuse what we've had? And again, I'm not just talking about recycling. I'm talking about a whole different model of marketing, where our role in marketing is to facilitate something different than just lead generation. Oh, when I look on LinkedIn and I see people advocating lead generation, I think, please, you're facing backwards, face forwards. There's new ways of doing this marketing thing. And we've got to come together to create the playbook. And another one that some of you may know that I'm really evangelizing and talking about is the concept of metaverse. That extension beyond AI and robotics, where we are living a blended virtual and real world existence. And if you want to bury your head in the sand and think, oh, that'll never happen, or oh, I don't like that, it's too technical for me. Well, I can remember the time when people said it was too technical to send a text message from their smartphone. And now look at us, we're all using mobile technology for everything that we do, including controlling our homes and our vehicles and everything in between. So please don't, fall into the trap of thinking it's all too technical, it's all too hard. It's going to be here before you know it. And I'd much rather it was you that was driving the 7th wave than your competitor. So there's opportunities afoot here. We've already looked here then at the economic focus, and it's exciting. It gives us an opportunity in marketing. But let's kind of bring this down to the next level, something we can kind of touch and use. So how has marketing responded, and what does marketing need to now be thinking about to respond to these opportunities, these societal focuses and these economic focuses? Well, back in the third wave industry phase, mass production, it was. So the industrial phase was mass production. In the consumption phase, those 40 years up to 1990, we called it consumption, but marketing then basically created product marketing. So it was all about my product has more features, better outputs, better outcomes than your product. So therefore, customers are going to buy it. So the focus on product marketing was huge. And towards the back end of that period, I was in product marketing. And I can tell you that is true. That is what it was like. It was all about my product's got 20 features, competitors got 15. Yeah, our product's probably better than yours. And that was really the way that the market was viewing it. Oh, I consume a product here that, has got, way more features than my neighbor there or my friend. So my product must be better. Well, of course, you and I know that simply isn't true, because the vast majority of features that products have, and I'm talking products in a generic sense here, the vast majority of those features literally are not used anyway. So it is all about then starting to figure out, of course, then we get to the fifth wave, the big data phase, figure out actually what is it the customer really wants. And so then things changed, and we then focused on digital marketing, because the amount of data we could glean from the customer interactions, the sales process, working in the customer support and customer service post-sale. So digital marketing became the thing. Now, a lot of us are still kind of trying to battle and tussle with digital marketing. And for some of us, it's still quite new. Well, the world has moved on. You're now working now, I would challenge, in some old historical kind of marketing, because right here, right now, as I say these words, our marketing focus should, could, and you could argue must be marketing sustainability. That is the key. Absolutely the key. We've got our products and services. Customers know about those. Most of our markets are saturated and overpopulated anyway. The digital marketing that we've been doing has created this huge, huge wall of noise. You can't cut through, even if you spend on advertising in that space. So, hey, why bother? Let's focus on the sixth wave. It's sustainability. So what is your view of your carbon footprint of your organization? What are your sustainability credentials? Who's talking about improvements and efficiencies? Scope 3 emissions. What are the emissions that are right the way through your supply chain? Now, if some of this stuff sounds like jargon you don't understand, then now is the time to embrace it. And I'll give you some things you can do in just a moment. But it's really important to take this stuff seriously. And it might also, once you've kind of mastered that, why not get in early? Why not preempt the seventh wave, the well-being thinkers? Again, with the marketing focus potentially being value-driven marketing, what's not to like anyway? Even if it is something subtly different to what we're predicting here, this would be a great thing to do anyway. Value-driven marketing, where there's a value to everyone and everything of the marketing that you do. So if you're still just doing digital marketing, there's a brave new world already available to you. So I'm not talking future here. We're already in the sixth wave. I've mentioned this quite a few times in this talk. It's the truth. For those of you already doing this stuff, you'll know that to be true. And even if you say, look, Neil, I'm in a really traditional industry, we're not really even, mastering digital. Well, forget that. Move to the sixth wave now before it's too late, because your competitors will be. Somebody in your marketplace will spot this. And even if you think you're the oldest, most traditional marketplace in the world, a lot of the decision makers coming through now are the millennials, and even the Gen Zs now have budget in your sector. So if you're not awake to this, the old school, the old firm are literally dying out. So that sixth wave is going to be a fundamental seismic change in your marketplace, even if you're not seeing it right here today. It's already here for most of us. So what kind of strategies would you have been doing and would you expect in these particular phases then? Okay, so back to the third wave, Kondratiev cycles. When we were doing mass production, when we were back in the industry phase, well, it was all about advertising and the selling of features. You know, back in the years 1900 to 1950, those big advertising agencies were founded. This is where advertising started to be seen on the high street and in the newspapers. And it was the selling of features, as I said earlier. Then in the fourth wave, the consumption phase, as we then turned our focus to marketing of products, it was getting a little bit better. So marketing strategies focused on researching to find out what the customer might want and or what was possible with the product, and then selling the benefits of those things. So rather than just selling features, we began to sell benefits. And look how long that lasted, 40 years of benefit selling, until the technology phase when, because of the internet, because of social media, because of this concept of digital marketing, we were able then to revert to a thing called customer relationship management, CRM, because we had the data. So we could read the data, we could evaluate the data, and then figure out from that data all the possibilities of selling more effective benefits, selling the right kinds of features, and in fact, not actually developing products and services that didn't work at all. And then, of course, promoting those through the digital channels. And for most of us, that it really is the phase, that fifth Kondratiev cycle, that fifth wave, the technology wave, that most of us have spent the vast majority of our time growing up in a marketing sense. So for those of you who are very new to marketing, you know, this is kind of where your predecessors have come from. So your line manager and their line manager probably grew up in this technology phase. And for some of us, that's all we've known. I entered marketing at the back end of the consumption phase. So I kind of, as I mentioned earlier, was part of a product marketing focus. So I've seen kind of digital go through the whole wave. And I can tell you it's gone, it's done. We've done that now, because we're now into our marketing strategies are all about purpose-driven marketing. So driving this marketing sustainability, driving the fact that the brand has to reflect our sustainability credentials, not overstretching them, not kind of promoting them, you know, beyond the point of reality or realism or expectation or perception, but actually making sure that everything that we do in our marketing and in fact in our businesses overall is driven by a higher purpose. And that higher purpose is not, and I'm going to state this really clearly, is not solely to make money. Okay, it has to be more than that. Value itself comes in many forms. And so when we move to the seventh wave and we look about, you know, collaboration, so not necessarily seeing everyone in our sector as competitors, not hiding all of our features about our product and all our IP and all our intellectual property from the competitors, but actually opening things up, things becoming much more open source and collaborative, so we can provide services in collaboration to drive the value of the things that we do, so that we can regenerate, so we can consume less, but do the right thing, and that we can do it in a way that is blended both, you know, within a metaverse, within an online society, as much as it is in the real world. So can you see how things are changing? It really is fundamentally different to what the textbooks and what everything else is saying at the moment about what we do and what we should be. And this is the fundamental problem that I have with all of this, is that most of the models, most of the theories are based on yesterday. In the third wave, the industry phase, the 1900 to 1950, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Do you remember that one? If you've ever done biology or psychology or sociology or marketing, you'll know Maslow. And of course, Kondratiev cycle back in 1925. So those were kind of almost the great-grandfathers of marketing before we saw the likes of Ansof's matrix, the marketing mix, SWOT analysis, Porter's 5 forces, the GE and Boston matrix, and pestle analysis. Now, on the graph here, on the table here, I've put some color coding because some of these, I believe, are still relevant. Pestle analysis, understanding the macro environment that you're in, the politics environment, social, technological, legal, and economic structure of the society in which you and your business live is vital. And a SWOT analysis, the strengths and weaknesses you have and the opportunities and threats you've identified from that pestle analysis are still going to be relevant into the future. But the G matrix, the Boston matrix, the marketing mix, Ansoff, it's all about consumption. It's all about products and marketing them and making people buy more. And now we're in marketing sustainability. It's simply and fundamentally wrong that we now focus on consumption. This is not what we should be focusing on. So I've put, in a contentious way, but I've put some of those old models in either orange or in red. And the reds, I would say, are a big red alert. We should be stopping using these models because they promote and actively position marketing in an incorrect and a fundamentally wrong way for this sixth wave of sustainable marketing and sustainability. And in the fifth wave, and this is coming right up to where most of us have grown up through marketing, balanced scorecard, again, really focused on commercial priorities, the communications mix, stakeholder analysis, Mendelow's matrix, all things that foster consumption, sales, lead generation, ROI on a financial bias. But things like the PISO model, SOSTAC model, marketing environment are still, I would say, relevant as planning models as we move into the sixth wave, the wave that we're all currently in, the wave of marketing sustainability, this purpose-driven marketing world. And there are things now available to us. So I've put all of these in green because they are really, really important. At a high level, to really get a grasp on kind of the reasons why we're doing this and what the rest of the world is doing, the UN's SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, really, really important at a very macro level to understand the things that you're aligning your marketing sustainability strategy against. Then things like models like the Sustainable Marketing Compass. If you haven't heard of this, you can search it and you will find it, the Sustainable Marketing Compass. And also the new Sustainable Marketing Mix from my own organization, the Mindful Collective. If you haven't seen this, it is very different to the old marketing mix, product, place, price, promotion. What is that all about? Products and consumption, the things that have got us to where we are on the planet today. So the new sustainable marketing mix is completely focused on marketing sustainability. So product, yes, but the right kind of product. People, yes, shareholders, stakeholder, and employee value. Process, that's the new P. We're not talking about promotion here, we're talking process. So efficiencies, carbon footprint, sustainable efficiency, right the way through, not only your organization, but through your supply chain. And then profit. You're allowed to make profit. If you're in business, you still need to make profit, but the right kind of profit. So the right kind of reinvestment, circular business, circular models. So a lot of exciting stuff. The old marketing mix, I will challenge, is and has for a long time been dead. We need to move to a new sustainable marketing mix. And for me, that is absolutely key. There's also the CISL's rewiring model and a number of other different models that are emerging in this marketing sustainability moment in time. But for me, it is absolutely vital that we do this. Kondratiev back in 1925 predicted that we would be going through these cycles. He didn't necessarily understand exactly how they'd be made up, but he knew that the pace of change would be ever increasing. And that has been borne out to be true. And the marketing focus as a response to those rapidly changing waves and cycles has been quite profound. You can see how we've got to where we are today, but here we are in this year, in this moment. And please, if you are still working to all of the old models, if you are still being driven as an organization by producing more, getting market share, creating more of a consumption of the planet, because you will be consuming the planet with your consumers. We need to, I think, change actually how we identify our customer. Maybe if we're looking at a what used to be called a consumer, we call them citizens. And we move away from this whole idea of, finding and making consumption attractive and actually encouraging people to do things more mindfully, to do things more in line with a higher purpose. So purpose-driven marketing really leading the debate, leading the conversation, and helping us to get in this sixth wave to where we need to get to as a humanity. And so for me, marketing can draw from the history, draw from the past, but really start to shape this playbook of the future. Because if we don't, and we simply live in an industrial, mass production, product marketing, digital marketing sort of communication world, then we are only going to be fostering and fueling all of the problems that have created the world that we are now trying to save here today. So marketing has a fundamental role, in my view, to play, but we can only do that if we change our marketing strategies and if we use the birth of new models and theories which are much more aligned and much more in sync with this new purpose-driven marketing environment in which we find ourselves. So I hope that that has given you a lot of food for thought. I hope that this particular table, which has shown you the history and potentially the future of marketing, has whetted your appetite to find out more. It would be great if you would like to find out more alongside me and work with me to create these playbooks. Connect with me on social. Let me know what you think. You can comment with any sort of messages below this particular place if you're watching this on catch up. But in any way, shape or form, if you have been inspired or are thinking about this new marketing environment in which we all find ourselves in this sixth wave of Kondratiev cycles that we're going to call sustainability, then please do connect with me, share ideas with me, challenge me, ask for help and guidance, and together we can create this playbook for this sixth wave. Thank you so much for listening to this. I hope you found it useful, and I look forward to working with you as we take marketing into the future.